Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Pardon me, I'm a little under the weather today, so Jimmy and Dale are going to ask most of the questions. So, welcome to another edition of In the Umpires, excuse me, Umpires Clubhouse. Take it away, Dale. I'm not sounding too hot.
Well, I'm surprised we're not doing this from a hospital ward.
Please.
Uh, yes,
Look
we
what
have a
happens
great guest today.
look what
I'm very
happens when
excited about today. Of course, that's Jimmy Joyce. I'm Dale Scott, and today we have George Drouches. If I'm saying that correctly, I hope I am, George. I know though, as an umpire and official, you've been called worse things, but
Yes, sir.
George Drouches is our guest, and George has a resume that it's unbelievable. He's the NCAA National Coordinator of Baseball Umpires. And I was, doing a little research for our show today, and I ran out of ink in my pen. There's so many things that you've done that I've listed. I mean, 10 years Division III umpire coordinator, 15 years of Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, men and women's basketball supervisor, 17 years CEO of the Umpire Association with college, high school, and amateur and American Legion, 40 plus years college football official, 35 years college basketball official, 25 years college baseball official. You were also a high school teacher and coach of both men and women's baseball and basketball, and you're in the two Hall of Fames, as far as I know, two high school Hall of Fame, St. Mary's and De La Salle, if I'm correct. And that was just page one. So very impressed. But George, this is your last year, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
You announced your retirement. This is your last year with the NCAA as the national coordinator of baseball umpires. How long have you been doing that?
Well, this is my 11th year, and I am stepping down at the end of the year. My contract expires at the end of August, and as you had mentioned, Dale, I spent 10 years prior as a Division III national coordinator. So I've lasted with the NCAA as a contractor for 21 years, and it's time for a fresh focus for somebody else and all of that. But we've accomplished some good things. But I've been very blessed to have been able to do what I've been able to do for the NCAA, and most importantly for our umpires. To be honest with you.
And just for our audience, just as national coordinator of baseball umpires, what exactly do you do? What are you focused on and trying to do for the collegiate level umpires?
Well, it's a 12-month position. What I do is I have people who work with me. I have a director of umpire training. I have advisors out in the field. I mean, responsible for all the training, all the videos, making sure the conferences are compliant with the rules. I work with the rules committee. I sit on the baseball committee. I assign the umpires for the College World Series in Omaha, as well as our regionals and super regionals. Divisions 2 and 3 report to me as well. So it's a very interesting position. So you know, it's a labor of love, obviously, and there's a lot of. Some days I have to turn sideways. I'm harder to hit, but I mean, all in all, it's my background is a player and as a college coach and educator by trade. Obviously, it's been a very a very I think blessed position these last 11 years. But anybody who works with the NCAA, obviously, it's time. It's time for somebody else. To be honest, I'm
Sure.
68. I'll be 69 here shortly. Retired from my private business, in the car business, sold my business, and so I'm ready for the next challenge.
Absolutely. I
Well,
totally understand
that
that because it was time for me to get out too.
We've all been there. Like Dale said, that's a pretty impressive resume. And when when you started, did you have any forethought that this was how it was going to end up, or were you just out there just doing games like Dale and I did, and then everything just kind of like fell into one basket, or did you see a need to get into the administrative part of umpiring?
Well, that's a great question, Jim. Thank you. I started. I had a young family, and I started officiating. I made $20. Working as a football official out in the bohunks of southeastern Minnesota, which bought some Pampers and an occasional night out of pizza.
There you go.
But and then I went into college coaching, and then I went into officiating. I worked college football for years, and I found it a wonderful avocation. And And when the opportunity came up to apply for the Division III job back in 2005, I applied and I interviewed, and then back in 2014, when Gene McCarter, rest his soul, retired, I applied, got interviewed, and got the job, and was very fortunate to instill a lot of the things I learned, not only as a player but a coach, and just basically trying to improve not only the officiating but also the coaching communities, and understand where college baseball is heading. And you see it, guys. You see that it's really exploded, obviously, and so I've been fortunate to be part of in catching that wave, to be honest with you. But to answer your question, it's just part of who I am. I'm a Christian Brothers kid, by the way. And I believe in service, and that's who I am.
Yeah, there you go. That's actually very admirable, as a matter of fact, because a lot of people stay away from that part of it, and they just want to go out and like you said, make their $20 and have a pizza afterwards and maybe a couple beverages like we used to do back in the day. And it is always, I'm not going to say amazed me because that's not the right word, but I've been inspired by some of the people that I have known along the line in the amateur parts of it, on how their dedication to their sports was down. Dale and I both know there was a gentleman here by the name of Howard Mayo in Portland, Oregon, and he was our basketball administrator, and he was in charge of the whole shooting match here. And I was always amazed on how his dedication to it, he was off the floor now, and his dedication to it was absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes you got to turn sideways so that arrow doesn't hit you, but you know what? That's part of it. I mean, I'm sure you've had your over your tenure, I'm sure you've had to turn sideways a few times.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I work with a lot of different personalities and egos when you deal with the SEC and the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, now the Autonomous Four, and the committee, and the money that's involved now in college baseball is it's unbelievable. I mean, the profit center that baseball has with Omaha is $30-40 million. I mean, that's huge money. And we work collaboratively with Major League Baseball and Commissioner Manfred, and and Tom Honick and Tyler and Richie Riker putting on a prospect camp down at the Vero Beach, which we just put on this past October. So a lot of things are moving forward, which is part of the legacy. But I've been very, very blessed to have been able to inject what I wanted to do to improve the game, and improve the officiating, and improve the cleanse the game, if you will. In other words, we've changed the game, not only the speed up rules and and you can't blow up catchers anymore and second basemen and all that kind of stuff. So we've made some pretty good progress over the last 11 years. So it's been an interesting run, to be honest with you. But I don't think I would have been able to do it if I didn't have the business acumen I had 25, 30 years in the car business, the leasing business, making money business, the capitalist business, and that's new to the NCAA. They're learning how to make money now, and that's a good thing for them.
I would think that the 11 years of this position, the 10 more before that with Division III, you have seen quite an explosion in the revenue that baseball brings in. And and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like in the 80s and 90s, you had the College World Series, ESPN picked it up. That was always a big deal, but you didn't have the revenue. You didn't have the revenue that came in that has exploded here probably in the last 20 to 25 years, I'm guessing. And just in your tenure at both the Division III and then at the position you're at now, you must have seen quite an explosion of that, or of just the super regionals and everything that used to be. They used to have these things, but it wasn't televised the way it was, and the revenue coming in. Or maybe
that's a great point.
Yeah,
that's a great point, Dale. I mean, yes, the biggest thing, the best thing that happened to college baseball was when the NHL went on strike. So ESPN had to figure out how to fill the void, and in college baseball entered. And you're right. I mean, ESPN's we're off the chart in terms of market value, and we have mass camera and all this other gimmicks that really have fueled. But in the last, I think, the 5-6 years, college baseball has become the number 2 revenue producing championship at the NCAA, next to men's basketball, which just finished. I mean, that's the cash cow.
Right.
Football is the CFO, and the other sports that make money basically are, men's ice hockey and and lacrosse and wrestling. But baseball basically pays for a lot of the championships. And you're right. When you see college baseball coaches now, especially in the SEC, that are making $3 million, to $1 million, that's uncanny. I mean, that's unprecedented. And then you throw in the NIL and all this stuff, but it is a business, and that's really what it is. And I think you have to approach it as a business. And the umpires, by the way, they're finally getting remunerated appropriately. And I will tell you, for the last 6 years, I pushed to get the umpires a lot more money in the postseason, because I don't control the regular season fees. But guys right now going to Omaha are now going to make about $11,000, whereas last year they made $6,200. So that's huge.
Yeah.
So that's big. That's part of my legacy, if you will, to get these guys the money they deserve, because the pressure, they're there in Omaha for 2 weeks, and it's not like last night. These guys come in for basketball, they leave, they fly out the next day. I did that for years. These guys they're sequestered for 2 weeks, and if you're not mentally tough, I mean, we've been fortunate to have the guys like an Angel Campos, or we're looking at a Clint Fagan, or, Travis Renginger, Sean Rakos, Casey Mosier, guys who have worked, at the major league level. We've been very fortunate to have them as part of our staff, if you will. So I'm very excited about our collaboration with Major League Baseball, but also the fact where college baseball is going, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. It's really going off the charts. Well, and you're right. The television and the streaming and in the advertising it's just crazy money right now. It really is.
They've got now a lot of these colleges have Mac Daddy stadiums that are nicer than some AAA stadiums. It's not the aluminum excuse me, aluminum bleachers anymore, and the backstop. It's like the ballpark in Omaha. It used to be Rosenblatt. Now it's the one they have now, and it's what, 20,000 seats.
Well, it's 25,000, and it was built to make money. Let's be honest. Rosenblatt was a great place, but it was kind of like the county fair, place. You moved in town Omaha, and you have all the suites and everything else. I mean, we averaged about 25.5 last year, and these guys are paying about $125 a ticket. I mean, that's big money.
Yes, it is.
But like I said, it's totally changed in the last, I would say, just after COVID, it really exploded, in terms of fan interest. And especially when you get SEC type schools, like Tennessee played last year, they bring the entire state. Or the year before, you had, Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Florida. I mean, they bring the entire entity, to Omaha, and they spend egregious amounts of money. But that's where the flavor of college baseball is right now, especially when most of the games are televised or streamed, and these coaches are making, 7 figures. And, that's a good, this is college baseball. This isn't football or basketball. So
right.
It's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Well, I'm going to go back to the powerhouse days of when I played 112 years ago in the powerhouse conference of the Mid-American Conference, Bowling Green State University.
Yeah. He's very proud of that.
Yes, absolutely. And, I still remember the days that, baseball was considered the stepchild of all the other sports.
Right.
And, there was no fence around ours was Stellar Field, and there was no fences around, no admission was paid, and people that were literally baseball fans came to watch our games, and I was contacted 2 years ago by Bowling Green State University. We're building a state-of-the-art baseball facility.
Very cool.
And it's under construction right now. And even in the small conference of the Mid-American, But they also sent a lot of people to the Baseball World Series back in the day when I played. Bob Welsh,
Yeah.
pitcher for the
Oh,
Dodgers,
yeah.
he
For the
played.
Dodgers. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, him and Bob Ochenko both were the stud pitchers for Eastern Michigan University, and they played, in the College World Series finals, as a matter of fact. So baseball has exploded across the continent, and that's, it can't be anything but good, to be very honest with you.
Yeah, and I
It,
worked at that old Rosenblatt Blatt Stadium in the association back, during the Reagan administration. but
AAA,
but
yeah.
it the explosion of the money that, like you were talking about, into it. I mean, look here in the Northwest, Oregon State has won a
Yep.
couple championships. They've had a heck of a program. They've upgraded that field that they play at. Oregon started a program about, I don't know what, 20 years ago or 15, whatever it was, and they have a beautiful state-of-the-art baseball stadium. But you're right, Jimmy. That used to be baseball was just it's the sport we do in the spring, and
Yeah.
it just wasn't on the same plane. And now it is a huge thing. And
Yes.
we know obviously a lot of umpires at work, college. They are either former, professional umpires, or just guys that we've known through the years, and they're they do pretty well. The pay has finally gotten to the point, that's compensating for what they have to do. So that's a tremendous positive,
Yeah.
going forward thing for college baseball. And I love it.
Well, you talk about pay, and like I said, we're very fortunate. We've been able to have a lot of professional umpires who spent 9, 10, 12, whatever years in getting the AAA and a few opportunities at the major league level, and now they've kind of come back to college baseball, which has actually improved our game, by the way. But these guys right now who are working in a Power Four conference, uh, and then maybe a regional or super regional, maybe a midweek game on a Wednesday, probably. So this is an avocation, they're probably making between $65,000 and $75,000. That's not a bad part-time gig, it really
No.
isn't compared to the days, when I remember. I mean, I used to work here in Minneapolis, and I go over to Minnesota, and I got $50 to work a game. Or I worked in the Big Ten for years, and I got $750 for the series, working 9, 2 sevens, and a 9. I had to pay for my travel. These guys are now making $4,500, and they pay for everything. So I'm excited about where the officiating is gone, but everybody's requiring everybody to be better, right? That's because the pressures on these coaches and these umpires have to be better, and I'm glad they're finally getting remunerated appropriately. But at the same token, they have to be even better than they were a year ago,
Exactly.
to be quite honest with you, because of technology. There's no doubt about
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you're going to if these guys are going to make that type of money, you're exactly right. That's what everybody's going to expect of them, no matter what. Even if they didn't get paid, they still expect it.
Well,
So,
yeah,
so the appropriate, funding for that, God bless them, because the heat's on them just like everybody else.
yeah.
And so I think that's a
No,
that's a great thing, actually.
well, it is, and I was down at Globe Life. They have baseball down there in February, and I was sitting down with the Texas Rangers execs because they have synergy in there, and they also they have the ability to see every pitch, in terms of different than TrackMan, and it's considerably more accurate than it was called Hawkeye actually, and and stuff like that. So it really helped us understand the high quality of umpiring we have, and they were impressed with what we're trying to do with the collegiate game. And like I said, it gets back to our working relationship with Major League Baseball, and because we follow the rules, we work with the Dustin Clams, and the video review people, Matt McKendry's, and all of that to kind of, because we're kind of moving together here as we get forward. But the game has changed, and it is a race war. It's an arms war, actually. These
Right.
stadiums are getting bigger, and I was down at Mississippi State and the LSU, and you got 11,000 people, and it's just it's exciting. But we have to keep an eye on NIL. By the way, we have to keep an eye on where this is going. Uh, but I think baseball's never been in a better place, to be honest with you.
Well, my
Did
son's a
you?
high school football coach right now here in Oregon, and he has to do the same thing for his high school kids already. that this is what is amazing to me. The money that is being pumped into college sports right now, which I am not saying is a bad thing at all. I'm saying is that it's a totally different thing than when I went to college
Oh,
and
yeah.
even tried to even fathom. My son right now in college, in high school football, is already has to be aware of NIL and name, image, and likeness is going to be huge, and it already is in football and basketball. But it's the next thing is going to be baseball. So.
Well, but last couple of years at the College World Series, there were several players who hit the diamond. I'm not going to tell you the teams, but they had $500,000 in their bank account from donors, and it's pretty interesting,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting from
Well,
from only a few years ago. But
I'm just
it's
happy.
exciting. Yeah, it's exciting.
I got a bologna sandwich.
Yeah, well, it was a really good one.
I look like a needy kid.
But luckily I'm a fan of a program that has some deep pockets at Oregon.
Yeah.
That helps. But one of my best
Imagine that.
friends is an Oregon State guy, and they got left out of the expansion and the Pac-12 demise and all that stuff. And I feel for these people. I feel for some of these schools. I mean, because not everybody's going to be able to stay at that level, and it's going to be the haves and have-nots, and that's you're seeing it happen. It's happening. It's like a slow train wreck because eventually some of these programs just aren't going to be able to stay in the where they're at because of finances.
You kind of sparked a question then like that with that, Dale, is George, what happens with the Pac-10 umpires? Are they just being absorbed by Mountain West, and are they losing money now because of the distinction of the Pac-12?
Well, yeah. Matter of fact, Mitch and I have talked to coach at Oregon State, and they're an independent, and they're a very good program, and they've done some good things out there in terms of baseball. But to answer your question, the most of the umpires from the Pacific 12 have been absorbed. The good ones now have been absorbed by the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12,
Really?
and the Big 10. So what's going to happen now is that all these guys that we've used, in our championship, and many of whom have come from the Pac-12, because they're very good umpires.
Yes.
Probably the better umpires in the country compared to the other parts of the country. So now they're going to be joining these staffs, and they're working in the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Big 10. Not so much the Big 10. I was out at Southern California, so it's all homogenous right now. So it's going to be really interesting to see where their future is. I mean, they're working a full schedule and probably making more money than they ever did, Jim, to answer your question. But it'll be interesting to see where these coordinators place them in terms of the conference tournaments, because now everything is so competitive. I mean, when I was out at Southern California in Irvine this past weekend, they play at Great Park until their field gets done in Southern California. But every one of those umpires, they're competing against each other. I mean, that's the beauty right now, is that everything is so competitive, and it's at an all-time high. And there's only 8 spots in Omaha, or 32 in our Super, and 96, and we've got 1,400 umpires in Division I. So it's very competitive, and it's good for business. To be honest with you, it's really good for business. But to answer your question, I think they're going to benefit greatly. I think the issue is going to be, hopefully they'll get a chance to work their conference tournaments and not have the coordinators rely upon the good old boy neighbor, that whole atmosphere, which is really disgusting, by the way.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll give these guys a shot. But that's what we look at. We're targeting guys right now for our College World Series and our Super Regional and our Regional. That's why I've been out and about, and I got 5 advisors who work for me. Actually, Travis Katzenmeyer, if you remember that name, he
Right.
he observes, and I think in Phoenix, he's one of our regional advisors. And so he's out. He was out at Cal and Stanford this past weekend. So we're very fortunate to have pretty good people we've had pretty good experience, observing umpires and evaluating umpires.
It's really kind of amazing too, and I'm sure Dale, you catch the same thing. We turn on these games on ESPN or whatever the broadcast, mostly on ESPN, and the names that come up because ESPN does a pretty good job at naming who's working the games, and inevitably I know somebody that's working that game.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, whether it be Billy Spooner, I mean not Bill Spooner, but Billy Joe Speck, Joe Burleson, Tony
Yeah.
Mainers, like you said, Travis Katzenmeyer. He was on, he worked with me quite a bit when he came up, and
Mike
so
Victor,
yeah, exactly.
worked a lot of games. The question I have, the umpires, I believe, and you had touched on it, for the weekend series or whatever, they're paid just a set amount, and then they take care of their own travel and hotel and stuff out of that lump sum, if that's correct.
Well, Dale, every conference is different, so I
Okay.
can't speak specifically, but for example, the SEC would give you a little bit more money and some mileage, but you have to pick up your rooms or whatever. But
I see.
but all in all, as you guys worked, and I travel a lot. You build up enough repertoire of points and travel and mileage, and I mean, you really can be very crafty at what you're
Sure.
doing here, so you don't have to pay for much at all. To be honest with you. So
Right. The question I kind of had though, because it's not as far as umpires. I mean, I know I talked to Victor just a couple of weeks ago. He was out in Oregon, and they're going. I mean, he's working several conferences that aren't. It's not the old. You're working the Pac-10 or Pac-12, and you're all on the West Coast. I mean, you've got guys going two time zones over to work or whatever. I was just curious, and I guess like you said, it's up to the conference. But I was curious if somebody from the West Coast is going to work an SEC weekend, do they get a little extra because of the travel might be more expensive than if somebody coming from somewhere down south?
No, to answer your question, yeah, Mike Victor, by the way, is an excellent umpire, and we're actually considering him off the record here to work in one of our super regionals. He's very good, but we have guys like Mike Lusky out there, Travis Ranginger we talked about, and Angel Campos, by the way. Angel Campos just recently worked in Austin, Texas. He's also worked at Athens and in outside of Atlanta in Georgia. Those guys are paid X amount of dollars just to get there. Okay, but every conference is different. But those guys are very active, especially the good ones, because they're going to work one weekend. They're going to work maybe. Well, I always call the Pac-12 it's kind of the country club league. I mean, they kind of stay.
So Pacific Coast League was called that too.
Absolutely,
yeah, country club. But now these guys are being exposed to work. They're working in at Oklahoma and Norman this past weekend. They're working at Austin at the University of Texas. They're working at Athens. They're working at Gainesville. They're working at Raleigh, Durham. They're all over the place. So they're all getting paid differently, by the conferences.
Right.
So, but it's a business, right? And they have to figure out the difficulty right now, especially the West Coast to the Eastern. You lose 3 hours, but they have to be there on a Thursday. And you can't get out of these towns, these college towns. You can't get out of Baton Rouge or, you can't get out of, Birmingham, or you can't get out of these towns, Knoxville or Vanderbilt. You have to fly out on Monday. So you're there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
right.
And that can be, detrimental to somebody, working, a family job,
Sure.
faith, family business. You guys went through that. So that's kind of that's kind of the downside of it, to be honest with you, but that's what people say. I signed
That's
up.
That's a good problem to have, though, to a certain degree. That in essence, I mean, yes, it's a problem, but I would look at that as okay. My family's going to understand, and and we benefit from this, and I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I'm good enough to be able to do this. I think that's the best. And you're exactly right, though. It can cause some problems, though. And I mean, we know about travel. All of us here, we all know about travel. And that one wrench that falls and then your flight is delayed, you're screwed. So, yeah. We've all been
It's
there.
another thing we don't miss in retirement is running for flights, right?
Exactly.
And
And
restaurant
then when
food.
you run and get there, oh, by the way, we have a mechanical. I
Yeah, well,
hated
thank you
the
so
word
much.
mechanical.
Hmm.
It's almost as bad as perfect.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, thanks for bringing that up too. Oops, excuse me.
George, back in the day, I don't know when it changed, but back in the day, you again had conferences, and I know in basketball, uh, or really actually more in football, maybe the SEC conference officials worked a certain way, and the Big Ten guys worked a certain way. Their mechanics were a little different, and this and that. And I assume baseball was similar to that, but not anymore because you have such a cross section of guys working different conferences. The question I have is, was there a certain time, a certain moment in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever it was, that they did similar to what football did and try to, mechanically get everybody on the same page on rotations and on everything that
Yeah.
you're doing?
Well, we publish we call it the Collegiate Commissioners Association Baseball Umpires Manual. We, in addition to football, does it, men's and women's basketball, softball does it, and that's kind of our Bible, if you will. I will tell you, yeah, there was a time where some conferences wanted to do things their own way, like when we put in the action clock, and they didn't want to enforce the action clock. What I had to do, and it really was polarizing, is I didn't reward the umpires who didn't adjudicate the rules appropriately. And once I did that, it sent a big message, a shot across the bow, if you will, that these conferences, we're not going to tolerate that. So we changed that probably 5 years ago. So yes, everybody's on board, because if they're not, Dale, you hate to pinch umpires, but I think you saw that at the major league level too. Is that, I mean, you want to reward the guys that are adjudicating the rules appropriately and taking care of their business on and off the field. I'm a big off the field guy. Okay, I mean, I like to see problems off the field, especially nowadays with social media and exposure and cameras and phones and all the other crap that's going on. But to answer your question, I would say in the last 2 to 3 years, across the board, major conferences, mid majors, even divisions 2 and 3, we're very consistent in how we're adjudicating the rules, and that's exciting. But
Yeah.
we had to take some measures, to kind of intimidate, if you will. And
Sure.
I don't like that. I
Well,
don't like that word, but we had to do something.
I mean, Jimmy and I, when we were, uh, until we solidified everything in MLB. But I mean, this crew chief, you don't go out on this. On this crew chief, you do go out on this. And we were rotating different crews. In a way, it was good because you learned all these different ways of doing things. Some were better, I thought, than others, and whatever. But it also was for a young umpire, especially, it could be very
Yeah.
confusing because there was no standard mechanic. This is what we do, this is what we do, and that all changed when they brought the leagues together, umpire staffs of the leagues together, and tried to solidify not only the regulations, because the National League had some and American League had some that were different, blah blah blah. They got that all on the same page, but they also tried to do that and have done that basically with on the field crews, mechanics, and how you're going to coverage, because I know it was, at one time it was really kind of a big issue in football because it was just so different in a couple different conferences, and teams would go out to play a non-conference game, and they're like, that's never called here, or that's always called here, or whatever, and it could be, the consistency wasn't there. And it seems like you, just from watching baseball the last several years, it really, it seems much more everybody's on page, and everybody's like,
Yeah. Well, you're
doing the
right.
same
You're right,
marching
Dale. I
order.
mean, what you don't want is, you don't want to hear, we get through May here, and we have conference tournaments, the 20th to 25th, and then we start our postseason. What we don't want to hear is that, why are you guys calling this now, right? That's always
Right.
our bridge is just like, okay. So we've kind of eliminated that, because we don't want to hear that anymore. But we want to hold the leagues accountable to enforcing the rules as written, in all shapes and forms. And we've done that. So we don't have too many circumstances that we used to have where, why are we calling infraction now? Or why are we ejecting now? Or, I mean, and we've taken on a couple of interesting issues this year. We went to the foreign substance checks, and I kind of went to, Matt McKendry and I think his name was Joe, who was training the umpires in terms of what the Major League Baseball was doing. And we've adapted what they've done. So we have had very few issues with, the issues that we had, last year with everybody pointing the finger at all the coaches that, all the crap going on with loading up the baseballs. So, and then the other thing was that we've added the double first base, which has really helped, eliminate the collisions at first base. So we had to take on a couple real tough initiatives without any guidance at all. But I do compliment going to Tom Honick and Tyler and, Dustin and Matt McHenry, and I think his name was Joe, who was training the umpires, the 76, of how they were going to, foster the foreign substance. And it's very helpful. It was very helpful. We've only had one ejection thus far, and we've gone from everybody alleging everybody was cheating to, only one ejection right now. And
that's an unbelievable turnaround in 1 year, right?
It is.
Are they?
Well,
I mean, that really is incredible.
Because everybody was cheating.
Yes, they were.
Well, you're a pitcher, you would know.
And now we're checking. Now we're checking 9 ways from Sunday, right? So
right.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
Are they learning that? Are they learning to hide?
Kids come out. Here's my glove. Here's my hat.
Yeah.
Here's my belt. But the double first base has helped too, because we had so many collisions at first base. And now the kids have to, go to the orange or the green base, and we've eliminated all of the collisions, and that's a good thing, because that was really the only troublesome spot with college baseball. You can't blow up the catcher anymore. You can't blow up the second baseman, shortstop. So, it's kind of a safety issue, and it's been very, very well received.
Are they learning to hide the substance, pitchers, better than they used to? I mean, some were not very good at it. Do they have other places that they're hiding it now? As a former catcher 1,000 years ago, I used to load it up. I used to cut it on my shin guard. I sharpened my shin guard, and I just cut the ball and throw it back. Nobody knew.
Well, we check you too, by the way, just so you know.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
it's been well received, but you don't want, like, the scarlet letter, right? You don't want the A hanging over you don't want the C as a cheater hanging over a head coach, because coaches will use that against them, and and all of that, and they're paying these pitching coaches, especially at Division I level, they're paying them $500,000 to be a pitching coach. Well, sure as F, you're not going to, you're not going to have a kid get ejected. I mean, I don't think that would bode well at a Power 5, Power 4 conference right now.
Dale brought up a point about like a guy from the Pac-12 moving into the SEC to do a game maybe over a weekend and stuff like that. Do you assign for a crew, or does the SEC assign, or whoever the conference you're at? Is there a crew chief? I mean, do you assign a crew chief for a specific, like a weekend series or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim. The SEC has their own coordinator. They assign. My duties are postseason only.
Okay.
So when we get that funnel of all these umpires, what I do is I look at the 16 sites that we're going to play at, and then what I do is I rate the guys, in terms of different classifications. Crew chief, good rules guy, good, those types of things, and try to put together the best fit possible for that particular game, and then take a look at the conflicts, right?
Right.
Because everything is so, in other words, where they went to school, where their hometown is, where they're working. I mean, everything is so optical right now. So, yeah, but right now, the only thing I do is postseason. The SEC has a coordinator, Big 12, Big 10, ACC, and they assign that accordingly. But what we do, Jim, is that we take notice on who have been the crew chiefs all year long in those particular conferences, and then comes the postseason. If Jim Joyce is going to be one of our umpires, and you've been a crew chief all year long, then you'll probably be a crew chief in a regional and a super regional. And hopefully that answers.
I gotcha.
Okay.
Do you have before the season starts, sometime in the winter or whatever, is there any, do you get, maybe it's regionally, umpires together to go over new rules, to go over whatever things that you need to get on the everybody on the same page on before the season starts?
Yeah, we used to have in-person clinics, by the way. That kind of went away a couple years ago because of costs, and I kind of mixed emotions on that. I think umpires like to get together around the country. We used to have 4 of them. Divisions 2 and Divisions 3 balked because they don't get paid a lot of money. So we went to an online clinic. So the online clinic basically this year was about 4 hours long. So within that, we cover all the rules. I have a rules and officiating video. I did send out, to you, Dale, kind of our baseball preseason guide that I sent to every head coach, and every umpire gets that. That kind of talks about where we are moving forward. So hopefully that answers your question so that we're all on the same page. I think in the future, I would really like to see more in-person clinics because the guys like the network, they get together. They're making a lot more money now than they ever did. And the biggest pushback from the conferences was that, it's too expensive to go to Nashville or Orlando or Baltimore or Chicago or Irvine, but we acquiesced, if you will. So, but you answer your question, yes, we have rules and officiating video, which is sent to everybody. I sit on the ABCA, American College, Baseball Coaches Association committee. So, we're pretty much almost week to week in terms of where we are within our season. So, to answer your question, yeah, I think we're pretty. And then we have testing. You have to score 85% or higher. So we have and background checks too in this day and age.
Oh yeah,
right now,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty intensive than where it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. To be honest with you.
And that ties into. I mean, you'd said earlier. I mean, that your position, what you do, is not just during the baseball season. I mean, you are just as active in the off season because you are, putting these videos together, or the rules changes, or I mean, there's constantly doing, when I retired, some people asked, well, would you work for MLB as a supervisor or somebody if they asked you, which, by the way, they didn't. But the point is, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to do that. And the reason was, as an umpire, Jimmy and I, when the season was over, we went home and we had a meeting in January, and then we went to spring training. Basically, was our off season. Those guys are working all the time, and they're doing reports, they're going to winter meetings, or whatever it is. And that's not something I was interested in doing. But a lot of people don't understand how much work there is in the off season to prepare for the season.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've deliberated with the NCAA in terms of what I get paid. I mean, I always told them that this job is a full-time job. And when I had my car business job, I mean, it was hard to balance this stuff, but it is, because everything has changed. Everything has just evolved so fast, and it's not the friendly world of 2015, 2020. It's a business. It's high profile. It's big money. It's betting. Betting is unbelievable. What goes on in college baseball. So you got to be. Yeah, there's so much that takes place. And I retired a year ago. But I will tell you, I'm busier now than I ever have been, because that's where the job has taken me. And it's nothing I've done. It's where the business has taken us. And that's a great point, because it's changed drastically, simply due to social media, simply due to gambling, simply due to
more exposure.
Exactly. And we got FBI guys all the time. We're looking at. I mean, it's crazy what's going on in college baseball. We never thought this would ever happen.
And we touched on travel a bit, but you're probably on the road a ton, I would guess.
Yeah, I'm out. What I do as a national coordinator is I want to put eyes on the guys, that we're selecting for, particularly the College World Series and our Super Regional. I don't want to have a coordinator tell me that George Drouches should be in Omaha, and I haven't seen George Drouches. It's not going to happen. So yes, I was out at Irvine this past weekend, but USC's they rent Great Park. They're hosting Ohio State, and they're now in the Big Ten. And there were 4 guys on the field that Kellen Levy was another name. Maybe he'd worked a little bit, but we're looking at. I need to look at those guys, for our College World Series. So yes, I'm out there every weekend from the middle of February to the end of June. This weekend I'm going, to Springfield, Missouri. And the reason I'm going there is we have a guy that we're looking at for our World Series who did a great job last year in the Clemson, Florida Super Regional. And I need to get eyes on him so I can report back to the committee that I saw this guy, because if I don't, then I have to be responsible for my report. But that's
right.
And then I've got 5 other advisors who are traveling all the time every weekend, so they're out. We had a guy out at Cal and Stanford, another guy at Austin, Texas, another guy at Raleigh Durham down in North Carolina State. We got guys.
And you coordinate, although they're do you tell them where to go and who they have to? Yeah.
Yes, and then they have to file observation reports. We have an online system that they file it, not an evaluation. I don't like evaluations. I like observations, because the evaluations back us into a corner, right? So observations, and so the advisors complete that. You got a guy at UCLA last weekend, for example, and they'll send that in. It'll go to the coordinator of the conference as well as the umpire. So the hope is that kind of delves the consistency, of our adjudication. So yeah, I mean, that's our system. And last year we put in 900 reports.
Wow.
So I can report that back to our committee that we've seen, and then we put a composite schedule together of what we have seen, and then we go back a year. Like, for example, we meet May 11th to 13th to select our umpires. We go back to 2024, what the site reps saw at the regionals, super regionals, what the umpires saw, the crew chiefs, the coaches. The coaches, by the way, they're required. They're required to submit an evaluation in the championship. They can't escape, because if they don't, they get fined. Right. So I guarantee you get the bucket of popcorn out and then read their conversation. It's pretty interesting.
I can imagine.
But it's accountable. Where I'm going with this, Dale and Jim, and it's accountable, Bob, in terms of what we do. So it's not just, I like this guy, let's bring him in, or he's my friend, let's bring him in. That whole good old boy's gone. Now that bothers a lot of people, to be honest with you. It does. But you know what? Too bad.
Times have changed.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's what I was actually going to bring that, that part of it up because I'm a proponent, always have been. And I think Dale can back me up a little bit on this one. I've always been a proponent that if you have eyes on instead of ears on, it's a totally different thing. Yeah. And Dale and I were very lucky. We had a supervisor that probably, in my humble opinion, might have been the best supervisor ever, Marty Springstead. Yeah. And Marty was very hands-on and very observant. But Marty liked to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah.
He would pick your brain. He would say, what are you seeing out there? How are you, and maybe he'd bring up, why do you do it this way?
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. And is the NCAA and your faculty and stuff like that,
yeah,
are they hands-on? Is it like, and I'm not going to say this happened all the time, but sitting down and having a beer with a guy was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
You would talk about baseball. That's
a great point, Jim. Our advisors are allowed to go in the locker room after the game and talk to the umpires, because the umpires like that interaction. It actually helps them. It kind of diffuses, humanizes, etc.
Yes.
And it kind of brings it more consistency when you start sitting down. And so the baseball umpire program, they're not the enemy anymore. Right. We're all in it to improve officiating, umpiring, and all of that. And it took a while to kind of get through that to the coordinators, because the coordinators kind of got threatened by that, because they're not out as much watching their umpires as we are. So, and you're right, that's been a great tool to improve consistency, but also respect amongst the fellowship. And it's really improved, officiating. As a matter of fact, I sit on a committee with NESO, the Officiating Development Alliance, and Mr. Young, I think is his name, Major League Baseball guy. He's more international.
Larry
Very
Young,
young.
yeah,
Yeah, Larry, nice man. He's
great
helped me a
guy.
lot. He's kind of mentored me a little bit in how to deal with that. Over the years, it's been 10 years I've been on the committee with him. But very, very helpful. But you're right, Jim. It's so important to humanize and get eyes on people, but also talk about what you could have done better. Tell me
Right.
what you saw here. Did you enforce the appropriate rule? And I'm sure at your level, you guys talk amongst yourself, right? I'm sure you do. Umpires
Absolutely.
umpires are like little girls right now in the
Yeah.
college game. They will poof, it'll go national within seconds. And that's huge because then they know we're holding everybody accountable and we're looking at certain ways that we could get better so it doesn't happen again. But you're right, Jim. I mean, eyes versus ears is Dale, it's tremendous. It's a big
Yeah, I mean, the word viral for stuff that goes viral online, umpires did that years ago. Before,
Oh, absolutely.
we would go viral on all kinds of stuff. I love the way you had phrased that: observations, not evaluations, because evaluations seem check a box, boom, boom, boom. It's a where an observation, you know, you can have somebody that aces a rules test 100%, but when you observe him on the field, he's maybe not that great of an umpire because he
Right.
doesn't have the instinct or the movement or the whatever. And so it's not always reflective in evaluations. I think observations are so important. I know we've got a little bit of time left, but I wanted to get into, because you do assign postseason, all the regionals, super regionals, the College World Series. And you do that with did you say 5 other guys, or how does that work? That whole
Well, we have 5 out in the field right now, and we meet at the national office in Indianapolis, May 11 to 13. So we convene. In the meantime, I send them everything I had mentioned, not only historical, but what the coach said last year. Umpires self-evaluated, or site reps. We have site reps at all 16 or 8 sites, or even 8 in Omaha, who evaluate or observe the umpires. So then we get together, then we have all of our observations that have been put together from the 16th to probably the first weekend in May, which will rival close to 900. That'll be put together in a composite and then sent to this committee that we meet in Indianapolis. We also have a Division I committee member there who has to validate what we're talking about, because obviously, and I put that forward back in 2017, because I don't want to be a part of the good old boys club. I want this guy to sign off on everything we're doing. So the next step for us is to get all that information. Now, prior to the meeting, we have 29 Division I conferences. We have 10 coordinators who some have 4, 5, 6 which, by the way, that's too many. I don't think any coordinator should have more than 2. I think when you have 5 or 6, that's a kingdom, and that's wrong.
Right.
That's too powerful. But they have to nominate their umpires. They have to rank them. So now they're going to rank their umpires. So, for example, this book, like here, this was last year, the booklet that we put together for our meeting. So these coordinators will rank the Dale Scotts, the Bob Bussers, the Jim Joyces in their conferences. So then we take a look at their ranking based on where we rank them. But in the meantime, we communicate with these coordinators the middle of March, the middle of April, and early May with communication, so we're kind of on the same page. Because what we don't want, Dale and Jim and Bob, is we don't want to go into our meeting with, we want to hire Jim Joyce, but Jim Joyce is number 20 in the ACC. I mean, that's a major disconnect. So hopefully we can.
I was wrongly convicted, though.
Well,
I should have been at least number 15.
No, I got you at 10,
I'm
Jimmy.
just using this as an example. I apologize. George Drouches. Anyway, but hopefully that helps our system, our accountability, and the advisors who work for me, start out on Thursday, the 10th. They have like 7 days to communicate with the coordinators to kind of extract from them, where do they feel Dale is at? Where do they feel Jim is at? Where do they feel Bob is at? Where do they feel George is at? So that we're not surprised. we don't want to be surprised. We want to be collaborative
Right.
and congenial, and that's our goal. Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But I'll tell you, the last 4 or 5 years, the plus or minuses have been minuscule, to be honest with you. But that's because of the communication and because of the reports that they're getting. They're getting all those reports that are sent to the umpires. They're sent to the coordinators.
And
So
always the unexpected has to have a little bit of a percentage in there, because you never know. Sometimes, and you've been there, we've all been there on shit that's happened on the field you never seen before, and it's all about how you handle it and how that situation is.
You're right, Jim. And then we have second background checks, which are pretty in depth. So they're checking on these guys like you wouldn't believe from 5 years ago. They're checking on these guys all like you wouldn't, because of gambling. They are checking on these guys like you wouldn't believe. They're drilling down. They're drilling down.
That's huge right now.
Flag, they're out. It's that simple.
Yep.
That's a whole nother podcast, gambling.
Yes, you're exactly right.
It's insane what's happening. And Jimmy and I, we've talked about this before on other shows. The number one above everything from the day you entered umpire school was the horrors of gambling and how wrong it is. And it still blows me away a little bit now that they've embraced these gambling, DraftKings or whatever, and they're telling odds on the shows and stuff. I mean, on the broadcasts and stuff. It is so not what was done when we first started out. But you had said earlier you had, was it 1,400 umpires that work?
That indicated they were Division I umpires working in one of the 29 conferences. Yes.
And that goes down to the regionals are how many umpires approximately?
96 and probably 15 alternates, and then down to 32.
Then 30,
probably 5 alternates, and then 8 in Omaha and be 4 alternates. So you can see the drop is
right.
You're in rarefied air,
Right.
So,
right.
No,
and to make that decision, I mean, you're the guy that's responsible for it. You have help, obviously, what you just talked about, but it puts a target on your back. It's got to, I would think. Guys that think they should be there, or the guys that
yeah. I mean, it's we're the culture of baseball is slow moving, as you well know, and the umpires, they think they've done something wrong and whatever. It's not that they've done something wrong. It's the fact that we're trying to move forward the marketplace, right? We're trying to get more umpires in the works. I mean, we have committee members that are, ADs at respective schools, and their schools are representative in Omaha, and a play didn't go the right way. I mean, they'll light me on fire. I get it. I mean,
yeah.
But it's the target on your back. Yeah, but in this job, you just kind of you go back to your hotel room, take a quick shower, go to bed, get up, and start over the next day, because it's like Groundhog Day. In Omaha, it's 2 games a day, and it's all the same. I mean, you can't whittle your time on one particular. You got to move on. I don't. I mean,
I guess what and you have to have the right attitude, the right makeup to do that. It's just like officiating in general. Not everybody can do it. I mean, you have to have the right frame of mind and all of that. And to be a supervisor, I mean, I know there were a couple years that I didn't get the playoffs, and I would talk to Randy Marsh was our head guy, and he said, Dale, it's nothing that you did. It's a numbers thing. We only have so many. We need to try to get new blood in there. You can't use the same guys all the time, because that way, nobody gets any experience. And I get all that, and some tough decisions have to be made.
But Dale, that's hard.
It's all part of the process.
Hard. That's hard, Dale. That's the hardest thing. You're absolutely right. It's hard for you, but it's hard for the umpires who call me, and they kind of go, what happened? And it's nothing that happened. It's that leadership you're taking on, trying to improve and embolden the whole system, for the future. But that also emboldens others to get better the next year, right? I mean, that's how this works. And that's hard. I get that. I went through that too in my football, basketball, and baseball career. I got those phone calls. I mean, I get it. You know,
There is
Yeah,
something to be
there's
said
only
for
so many
back,
spots.
yeah,
right?
back in the day though, when Dale and I first started, we actually had a rotation basis. And to a certain degree, it wasn't a bad theory, actually. I can remember, and I can even think of the three umpires that were working. It was Ken Kaiser, Dale Ford, and Larry McCoy were working the World Series, and everybody thought that Marty Springstead had lost his mind by putting these guys in the World Series, and they probably had one of the best World Series ever,
Yeah,
ever. And so sometimes, if you're good enough to be on the field, the rotation basis is not that bad. I know it's not 100%. Believe me, I'm not going that, but at least if it was a rotation merit basis, it gives you at least an out if you don't think somebody qualifies, meaning the merit part.
Yeah,
well,
As long as you're
and
put in the
before
loop,
when at least sometimes guys get bypassed continually and maybe
right?
unfairly.
And that's
But
what's going,
but the
and that actually in the Major League Baseball right now, that's actually what was going on for the last 10 years.
Right, and the problem with that, and why they got away from it is because the media would just kill you if an umpire had a play. They said,
Exactly.
"Well, why is he out here?" Well, it's rotation, it's his turn. Well, but why is so and so sitting home when he's your top rated umpire or whatever? So, I mean, I get the argument of that. But I also understand because I've seen it. You've seen it, Jimmy. That there were through the years certain guys that they just didn't like, and
Yes.
and and they would just bypass them out of spite. It seemed like more than anything else.
And George, we just had Bob Costas on. Actually, Bob was doing the game that I remember when Dale Ford actually had the plate on. It was a Saturday afternoon World Series game, and I remember Bob. I wish I would have asked him about this, but he said, Dale Ford. He said Dale Ford is not the greatest umpire in Major League Baseball, but he's having a hell of a day.
yeah.
And
Well, yeah,
it's a good thing to see sometimes.
you're right. I mean, but I will tell you confidentially. I mean, sometimes we run the mama, right? And I have put together the dream team of umpires at the College World Series simply because I wasn't comfortable with the fact of, you know, just
Right.
giving other people opportunities because ultimately my task is to protect the championship. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great point. That's a great point. We're fortunate we've got a lot of very good umpires who are very deserving of an opportunity. But you're right. There's been times where I've kind of poo-pooed, if you will, uh, giving opportunities versus hunkering down to putting in veteran umpires at the right spots.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
As long as that other person has a look see,
there you go.
because maybe this isn't his year,
Yeah.
There you
but
go.
maybe if he's in the loop, which I understand you're saying, George, is that they are all in the loop as of right now anyway, and that's the way Major League Baseball is right now too. Supposedly they're all in the loop.
Well,
You
we're
know, and
down. I mean, we're down to probably 12, 13 for Omaha, probably another, 38 for 32 spots, and then probably 125 for 96. So we've pared it down now, since February. So we know where we have to go.
Yeah.
just to tie
So
that up before we leave, when it was American League, National League, I remember Marty said, the year that the National League was the home team, they had 1-7, and that's when you worked one and
Right.
seven as the chief. He could set up the three American League umpires differently than if the American League had 1-7. Then you would want
And
maybe
that's what he
somebody
did.
else.
That's what
That's
he did with
exactly what he
that
did
crew I'm talking
because
about.
that's exactly right. But innkeeper, I think it's about time, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, sorry guys. I'm
Wake
usually
up,
more
Bob.
animated, but oh man. Yeah, it is time, guys. George, thank you for coming on.
George, thank you very much, and congratulations on one a hell of a career, and enjoy retirement. And I remember when I got hit in 17, and I signed off on June 1st that I was going to retire. That was my first summer off in 2017 since 1980, so I was pretty happy.
well, I'm looking forward to going on a cruise. I've never been on one, and I'm I'm looking to go on a cruise.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Remember to leave your cell phone at home too, so they can't get a hold of you while you're on your cruise.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, George, for coming on.
Thanks, Jim, Dale. Thank you, Bob.
We
Thank
really
you for the
appreciate
opportunity.
it. He's George. I'll get this out. Don't worry, guys. He's Jimmy Joyce. He's Dale Scott.
Yes.
I'm Bob Busser. The in the under the weather, Bob Busser. We will see you next time. Remember, always take the road to the left. You never know what you'll find. We'll see
And
you next time.
subscribe.
And subscribe. Thank you, Dale. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ben.